Hey, friends. Welcome back to the Pouring Over Books podcast. I am LaShawn, your host, and friends. This is the last Tuesday of the year. Can you believe it? How do we get here so fast? I feel like this year went by so fast and I read so many books. I think my final count right now is hovering like around 136. I might get to 2 or 3 more books. I'm like 50% through like 3 books. So I'll probably get through those 3 books. So I might hit 140. I might, depending on if I read anything, if I get into a good groove, if I get to absolutely do nothing for like at least one day this week, it might happen. Because I don't know about you, but I've been marinating, becoming one, being a sloth on my couch because it is that time of year, that week between Christmas and New Year where you literally don't know what day it is and you are full of cheese and sweets. And that is me. So I really have no intentions of doing anything else for the rest of the week but reading. So this episode will be short because I have taken a short break. My attention span is short, and so I am sure yours is too. I was going to wait until the beginning of the year to record this podcast because I was like, oh, what if I get, my favorite book, but the 3 last books I'm reading, I know that they're not going to bump anything off of the list that I'm currently reading. At least I don't think so. So I've completed the list and I'm going to share. The entire list is up on my website, which I will link in the show notes. That list has my 20 best books of the year on it. It's full of 20 books. But today I'm only going to talk about 10 of them. Yeah, I'm going to talk about 10, my top 10 from the year. So, let's get into it. All right. Number 10. At number 10 is The Night and the Moth. Number 10 is The Night and the Moth. I had no intentions at all of reading this when it was first published because I knew it was the first book of the series and I've been burned. But I loved Rachel Gilling's Shepherd King duology, and I love the fact that she does duologies. That duology was one of my faves in 2023, so I was enjoying it. And so I decided I wasn't going to read it. I was going to wait, but I was off of the arc and I gave in. I listened to this all the way through. It started off really slow for me, getting into like the magical system and the world building, but it was a good slow. Like it was I'm an intrigued slow, just like her previous series. Like it's slow and it's lush and the story just builds on itself so slowly that I didn't even realize how much I was into it until it was over. I love this. The story itself, like I said, it built and built. And just when I said, but what will the next book be about? That last chapter, I suspected, but I didn't know it would go like that. But I was very pleased, and the romance was just perfect. It was like the perfect companion to the overall story, which is really how I like all of my stories, if I am being honest. So if you were looking for a romance first fantasy, like a romantasy, this is not it. But I still think you should read this because it was worth it. And I'll leave you with just one word, orthogonal. Anyway, I really enjoyed this one, and now I can't wait to read the next one. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars, and it was great. I loved it, loved it, loved it. Number 9 on my list is Can't Get Enough by Kennedy Ryan. This was one of my most anticipated books of 2025, and I loved every minute of the love story of our good sis Hendrix. I'm going to start my review by saying that I loved, loved. I cannot express enough how much I loved the fact that this was a romance between two 40 somethings who had their lives together, who knew what they wanted and moved accordingly. I cannot stress enough at this point in my life how much I appreciated that. I love that Hendrix had such an amazing and full life before she let Mav into it, and that he was simply the icing on the cake. Everyone was grown and mature and had grown folks' business, and I love that for all of us, really. the readers and for Hendrix. And the spice spiced, yes, yes, it did. And I enjoyed every minute of that. But I also want to say that I really appreciated her being a caregiver for her mother with Alzheimer's was such a big part of Hen's storyline, and the way that Kennedy Ryan portrayed their relationship and the changes they had to navigate because of disease was beautiful, and I think that was a big theme this year. There was a lot of storylines I read this year where the parent had dementia or Alzheimer's, and I just think that's interesting that that was a theme of the year. If I could have given this book 10 out of 10 5 stars, I would have. It was the perfect conclusion to the series. Just if you haven't read it yet, what are you waiting for? Number 8 on my list was Shield of Sparrows by Devney Perry. Now, I admit to being skeptical about Devney Perry, who is one of my favorite romance authors writing romantasy. It seemed that this was the year that many romance authors that were making a pivot into the world of romantasy. And, I know that that's probably financial, but at least I figured even if the romantasy didn't romantasy, we would at least get a good love story. So with that in mind, I said, I'll read the first chapter. And then I was up until 2 a.m. So, my friends, it's been a long time since the first book of a romantasy series has drawn me in and kept me in a chokehold like this one. Like I said, from the first page, I was almost addicted. I literally could not put this book down. Like I said, 2 a.m., I looked up and I was like, everything about it kept me interested from the monsters, like what exactly are they, the world building to our main characters, all three, and the slow burn, the tension, the I hate you. It was just so good. It was so good. Everything about this book drew me in and kept me on the edge of my seat until the very last page. I had theories upon more theories. Some of them I was right about, but the majority of them I was so wrong. And I'm happy that I was wrong. The last page, I was like, wait, what? What is going on? But I love that. Devney Perry skillfully led us through this new world and the mystery of it all. There is so much still, and I cannot wait until the second book comes out this in 2026. It's already been announced. I love that for me. And it gave me first time reading Akatar's feels, A Quarter Thorns and Roses, and the first time reading Throne of Glass feels. Like I was like, wow, this is a really good world. I'm really enjoying this, and I cannot wait until we get the next book. Like I said, 2026. I think it's coming out mid 2026. Anyway, when I talk about my one of my most anticipated books of 2026, yes, it is on there. At number 7, we have Dominion by Addie E. Sitchins. If you are Southern and have a familiarity with small towns and Southern church culture, specifically Black Southern church culture, this book will make perfect sense to you. The church dynamics combined with power imbalances between the men and the women and the culture when men are the prize no matter how bad they are, that is the central theme of this book. From the teenage diamond already at 17 trained and ready and eager to keep Wander's secrets, who is our male main character no matter what, and next to First Lady Priscilla, knowing and understanding that her role has always been the same for her husband and her boy children. It is just an excellent book, and I really unexpectedly enjoyed it. I was caught up because it was like so familiar in some ways, like the culture behind it. And then the story itself was just scandalous. And I just had to keep reading. I was mad at everybody, each and every last character, confused a little bit about a couple of things that I felt like there was a couple of holes in that we got that just didn't make sense. But overall, it's number 7 on my list because it was really good. It was really, really good. Number 6 on my list is The Everlasting by Alex E. Harrow. This book was just beautiful. I don't know how else to describe it. It was unlike anything I've read this year. in that it didn't have all of the romantic tropes or typical romantic characters that you usually have, like the smoldering shadow daddy and the tiny, scrappy female main character who's here to save the world, who doesn't think she's good enough. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But it didn't have those. It was unique. The writing was like poetry. It was yearning. It was a love story Groundhog Day, and I was riveted. And I'm so glad that I took a chance and read it. I gave this book a 10 out of 10. No notes. It almost slipped into the top 5, but I could not displace these next 5 books. So let's get into my top 5. At number 5, we have Slanting Towards the Sea by Ladija Hillier. I think that's right. Yes, this book was one of the most beautiful books I've read all year. There is a line in the book that I wrote down. I have it up here on my screen, so I'm going to read it. Where is the fine line between sacrifices that make sense and those that don't? And how do we tell them apart? That is the question and the theme of reading this book because, oh my goodness, Ivana was such a beautifully complex character driven by like big emotions and love. And even though I question almost every last single choice this woman made for herself during this book, I also found myself aching for her, even as she made hard decisions and how her decisions set in motion like a series of events that you look back on and say, she could have prevented all of this. But the results of her decisions and also resulted in beauty and love. And how can she disrupt that is like one of the biggest questions I think in the book. This was heart wrenching. Like I was heartbroken for everybody in the book. And it was beautiful and it was stunning. And it was one of those books that will take me a long time to forget. 10 out of 10, no notes. It was beautiful. And that is why it had to stay in the top 5. And yeah. The next book at number 4 is Broken Country by Claire Leslie Hall. This was part thriller, part love story, and I could not put this one down either. I never even suspected the first twist, and then the second one made so much sense that I audibly gasped when I read it. It was so well done. This book was so well done. It just drew me in and kept me in a chokehold until the last line. I feel like that's the theme of my top 3, but I had a different ending in mind when I started the book, but when I got to the end, I understood that was how the book had to end. 5 out of 5 stars. It's in the top 3. It's in my top 4. I played around with it, but yeah. But anyway, the next book. Now the next 3 books are my top 3. I've moved these 3 books around in positions a lot to come up with the top 3. It could have been a three-way tie if I'm being honest. And literally up until I recorded this podcast, they moved. So at number 3 is August Lane by Regina Black. I have to ask, how is this her second book? How is this her sophomore debut? The Art of the Scandal was one of my favorite books the year it came out. That was her first book. But this one, you have washed up country star Luke, who reluctantly says yes to the chance to play the legendary JoJo Lane at her famous Hall of Fame concert, even though it means returning to his hometown and seeing August, his first love, again. August, who is JoJo's daughter, is not excited to see Luke after she feels like he abandoned her when he left town without a word and recorded their song without giving her any credit. August Lane was literally one of the most beautiful, slowest of the slow burn second chance romances that I have ever read in my life. And usually I hate second chance romance. Not hate, but it's not my favorite. But there is so much more here. There is commentary on Blacks in country music. There is overcoming addiction and childhood abuse and expectations of family that a lot of young Black girls go through. But as a whole, this was August and Luke's love story and their story of redemption and love and overcoming the odds to finding their way back to each other. And I cannot recommend this enough. I mean, this was one of the best books I've read this year, and everyone who I have suggested it to has said that they loved this. So that's why it's in my top 3, and that's why it has gone back and forth, and why this should have just been a three-way tie because it was just excellent. It was just excellent. My number 2 spot is Oathbound by Tracy Dion. For about 50% of this book, this was like a clear 3.5 for me. I was like, "Oh, okay. All right." Then we hit 51% and it was like, "Oh, this is a solid 4." But baby, we got to that last chapter and this became a 5-star book because all of the pieces that I could not figure out why they were there, why we were talking about these people, why they were included, why these characters were here when I wanted to know more about these other ones. It all came together so brilliantly that I sat there staring out of a window, blinking for a good 10 minutes, like, my God, I am so mad that we have to wait an undetermined amount of time for the next book. I'm mad at myself for reading this and now have to wait, but it was so good. So good. And what makes it even better is this is a YA book. This is a young adult fantasy book, and y'all, so good. So good. That's all I gotta say. It was so good. I'm gonna have to reread the whole series just so I can get back to that point. Now we're at the number 1 spot. It is King of Ashes by S.A. Crosby. I knew this was a 5-star read at the 50% mark. And this is why it's at number 1, because it is the one book where I just knew. I knew from like the second page that it was gonna be at least 4 stars. But by the time we got to the 50% mark, I was like, oh, just give it all. It exceeded all of my expectations. I used to read more thriller books, more mysteries, but I've fallen away from that in the last few years in favor of my fantasy and romance books. But friends, I might just have to come back and read all of S.A. Crosby's backlist because this was everything. It was just so good. I don't even know how to put it. Like I said, this is not my usual book. It was violent. It was riveting, and I could not put it down. Plus, the writing itself was just beautiful. And I'm realizing lately that the nerd in me likes it when I hear all the big words I learned in SAT prep used in a sentence in a book. But the way he made you feel with those big words was literally like the best part of the book for me because, how can I put it? The way I wailed and screamed my way through the last 25% of that book needs to be studied. And that is why this masterpiece, it was a masterpiece leading us to the conclusion that had me screaming and staring at the wall. After reading the book, after reading the last chapter, I was like, what? 5 out of 5 stars. I follow somebody on IG who gives books 6 stars when they exceed expectations. This is that book, and this is why it's number 1 on my list for this year because I think I put it at number 1 because the rest of the books I kind of expected them to be good or either I expected to be drawn in, but this one was so much out of my comfort zone, you might say, that I did not expect it to be as good as it was, and it shocked me. And these days, it takes a lot to shock me with books. So that is why it floated to the top in the end. I fought with myself for like half the month on what these top 3 books were going to be because I kept switching the order of the top 3. They were all at number 1 at one point. But in the end, yeah, that was number 1. All right. So let's get into what I am currently reading real quick, and then I will let you go. But I just got finished reading The Heir Apparent by Rebecca Armitage. I listened to this book and it was excellent. It's a bit of a play on what if Prince Harry had been a girl? That whole situation with him leaving the royal family. What if instead of moving to America, the royal moved to the Australian outback and became a doctor? What if by circumstances she became the heir and had a year to decide if this was the life that she wanted or if she wanted to go back to Australia and be the doctor? It is such a good story. It drew me in, and I expected at first, I was like, okay, I'll just listen to this. But it was so good. It is I don't know if you wanna say it's women's fiction or if I don't know if it's classified as romance, I have to look, but there is an ending that is satisfying, and I enjoyed it. I would had my doubts that she would go. I thought it was gonna be one of those bittersweet endings, but no, it it wrapped itself up wonderfully, and I loved it. I think I gave it a 4 out of 5. I am currently reading 3 books at once. I don't know if I will finish them all by New Year's Eve at midnight, but I'm finally back into Our Vicious Oaths. I am also finishing up The Second Death of Locke, and I am reading Sunshine by Samantha Lay, which is the second book in a series that I didn't know was out. I randomly saw it on Kindle Unlimited this weekend, and I read the first one, I think, this summer and had no idea that the others were out. I think they're 5 it's one of those series where romance series where it's 5 siblings. So 3 of the books are out, and I love a good sibling series, so I will be tuned in. I think right now she's doing all the brothers first, and then she's gonna end up with the sisters. The next book up is The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison, which is the January pick for our Year with Toni with the Pouring Over Books Book Club. You still have time to join us. We start reading on January 1st, which is Thursday. I will leave the link in the show notes where you can join us. Like I said today in an Instagram post, I think a lot of people fail to read Toni Morrison because they don't have support and they get to a line and they don't understand it and then they just fall off. They're just like, uh, okay, I'm done. But I think when you read it with friends or you read it in a group setting, that you can help each other understand it. And that's what I'm hoping to do. I'm hoping to get us all through it so that we all come out on the other side, even if we don't fully understand what she meant to do. I want us to at least to have enjoyed the process or, and not be on the struggle bus when it comes to Toni Morrison. And so that is why. And plus, she's an important author, and I just think we should all read her book. Come on now, it's Toni Morrison, and it's perfect. Like, there are 12 books, there are 12 months. Hey, anyway, join us for that. All right. Okay, friends, that is all I have for you today. Next week, I'll be back talking about my bookish goals for 2026 and some of my most anticipated books of 2026. I have a long list that I'm trying to break down. I have a long list of the books because you get these catalogs and you go through them and you see all the books that are coming out, and I'm like, whoa. And I'm trying next year. I read diversely already because I'm Black. I can't help it, but I want to some of the call out more diversity in the books, most anticipated books of 2026 list that I see out there because some of them are so beige, friends. Not even beige. Some of them are just white. I can't even put it in a nice way. And I'm like, where's the color? You don't have no Hispanic, you don't have no Asian writers, you definitely don't have any Black writers. Like, what are you reading? And there are so many good Black stories coming out next year that I feel like, how can you miss them? I mean, there are biographies, memoirs, there are romances, there's literary fiction, there's horror. There is so much out there that is coming out that I'm like, why are these books not on your list? And why is only 2 popular names on your list, but nobody else? What you doing? What you doing? Anyway, so I hope to add a little diversity to your list next week when I come back with my most anticipated books list. I can't list them all on this podcast, but I will try to make sure I talk about them all during the year. And I'm going to put like a master list on the website so that if you want to look in, you can to get ready to have these books on your list to anticipate them. Anyway, friends, like I said, that's all I have for today. As always, if you enjoyed listening, I would love it if you would follow me on Apple Podcast or your favorite podcast platform. And if you have a minute please think about leaving a review on Apple Podcasts or sharing the podcast on social media. It does help us grow and find more bookish friends. And if you'd like to connect with me, you can email me at pouringoverbookspod@gmail.com. And you can also connect with me at the Pouring Over Books on Instagram or my personal IG at LaShawn Wiltz and on TikTok at LaShawn Wiltz. Thanks again for listening, friends. I will talk to you later. Happy New Year.